Hello and welcome to the Decision Intelligence podcast, where we have real, candid conversations with thought leaders, practitioners, and tech experts about AI, decision intelligence, and the future of work. I'm your host, Fred Laluyo, co-founder and CEO of Era Technology. Today, we are going to discuss how BP Castrol is advancing its decision intelligence journey and achieving measurable results. I am pleased to welcome our guest today, JP Lebudel, Chief Supply Chain Officer at BP Castrol. And it is your first time on the podcast, so welcome again. Before we start, tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, your role at BP Castrol, what led you here. We want to know a bit more about JP.
Oh, well, let's try to make it very short. Well, I think it all started when I was a 5-year-old, accompanying my father in the factory and, getting an appreciation of what it takes to get things done. It's only much later in your career or in your life that you realize how much of an impression those early moments and the capacity to accompany somebody like your father, shape your outlook on things and also your passion. And I love to build, I love to make stuff, and that has guided my career. Started very early on in finance with GE, did a bit of consulting, and then stumbled in the world of flavors and perfumes and really loved it. I spent about 20 years with a player called Firmenich, now DSM Firmenich, in different roles, and also taught me a lot about the value of understanding not only the consumer, but also the customer, and being very much focused on driving innovation and enabling the value chain so that you can be laser sharp as to how you deliver against that promise. So now I find myself in the world of lubricants.
Different types of molecules, but still molecules.
You're still blending, still making products, still having to satisfy various customers, the channel members, but also the end consumer, and making sure that our product set and services are compelling as well.
So tell us a little bit more about BP Castrol and its supply chain. It's a lot more complex than you could imagine. So share a bit with the audience here, the complexity, the scale of your operations, and the key areas that your supply chain supports.
With pleasure. Well, I think for the past 125 years, Castrol has been a pioneer, trying to break boundaries and enable OEMs, manufacturers to push the realm of what is indeed possible and to make it as efficient as possible. Today, we operate in more than 150 countries. We serve more than 3,000 distributors in the space of B2B to C for automotive. We serve thousands of industrial companies, as well as, of course, our products reaches hundreds of millions of consumers around the world. It's a well-known brand. Our products are present from Mars, of course, to top of the earth, as well as the bottom of the sea. So our reach is actually quite broad. We have applications in subsurface applications, in cars, in planes, and also in the rover that still operates in Mars.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty
cool.
So
did they have to make a special lubricant for it?
Indeed, special lubricant and special devices in order to deliver those lubricants and to make those little miniature rovers work.
Wow, excited! That's. I think you're one of the only guy who can say that your supply chain goes from Mars to the bottom of the Earth. That's that thing's quite unique.
A capacity though to service those things on Mars, but I'm sure that with the help of others, we will find a way to do it.
So the complexity spans from the types of products, but also you talked about B2B to C, B2B, and a lot of special projects. So as you and I have been exchanging for a little bit of time now, so DI has become part of your supply chain transformation, right? So what are the strategic goals that you are driving in this journey, and how is it shaping your priorities?
Yeah. Look, as we embarked on this journey, it was literally about making sure that on our marine business, we will not miss the boat. So how did we find the opportunity to regain some of the lost revenue opportunities, but also to make sure that we could dispatch our products to the right ports with a relevant level of assortment so that we could show up on time with the right products at the right cost. So we are broadening that. And
but before you go there, JP, before you broaden, I think it's worth explaining a little bit because I didn't know much about it until you explained to me. So the business challenge and the revenue impact when a ship goes to port and needs to get serviced, if the right product is not there at the right time, it will get serviced regardless, but with another product. So I think this is something that I didn't understand. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, not possibly by another product. Unfortunately, it has its own set of requirements, but it will be serviced by another supplier.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Lies the true challenge. And typically, as we have been losing about 15-20% of the revenue opportunity, not being able to serve that customer at that particular port with the relevant lubricants and ancillary goods. So all the greases that are required to make a ship function, the lubricants for the engine.
And when they arrive, they have a short, I mean, they want to stay, docked as little time as possible. So they have you there at the right time or the opportunity is gone and it doesn't come back.
It's gone. Indeed. But it's the same thing with the consumer. So if you think about you and I going to get our car serviced, if your workshop does not have the relevant Castrol lubricant for your car, guess what?
Yeah,
it's likely
they'll put something else
to provide you with another lubricant. So again, that's also the challenge that we face on land. How do we make sure that for the relevant consumer or customer, we show up with the right assortment at the right time, at the right place? No, it's a perennial challenge for any industrial company that provides goods. So there is the opportunity in terms of how do we use decision intelligence to make more timely decisions and better informed decisions based upon statistics, based upon data. And what we did with your help, we ingested in the case of marine ship movement, live ship movements. And you say, but nothing new there. No. Then we combine that with our historical sales, and we combine that with our record of who are the customers that we serve, and thereby what are their specific product requirements so that we could be more laser focused. And that has enabled us to recoup, I would say for the past 2 or 3 quarters where we've been live, a few millions. I will not disclose exactly how much, but I think the impact has been sufficiently relevant for us to then build the ambition to broaden this to other categories, but also to change fundamentally the operating model, because this is the other element that decision intelligence can unleash is how do we change the way in which we operate? How do we remove the handoffs, or how do we remove the hurdles, internal hurdles, in terms of how long of a lag do you have between the time you have the relevant insight to you being able to act upon that insight, thereby taking the steps to be able to service that customer. And often we take too long, or we don't see soon enough those signals to be able to act or react. So we can apply it in other segments. And of course, we are also seeking to apply that to our supplier base, because in the same manner, we buy spot, we buy term deals, but often we don't have sufficient time to react to opportunities. Thereby, we don't seize those opportunities. So there are plenty of I would say, areas where we have the ambition over time to apply decision intelligence. And now we are building a broad plan as to how we build a control tower or command center to have the capacity to see, to act, and react. And again, it's a capacity to also embed a view of how do you preempt, how do you use indeed historical information or live information to then set yourself for success and understand the constraints that you will have to manage and the different scenarios that you can apprehend. And thereby, it also helps us not only be far more resilient, but also far more relevant to our customers. And that's, for me, a big plus.
And your
Especially in the
customers are
world.
your customers are
Mhm.
seeing the impact already. You mentioned some, you shared some numbers, but what is the reaction of the customers? Do you see that evolving now that you got this new approach in place and you're able to serve them better?
For some customers, it has been positive. Many have not yet understood how we have enhanced our capacity to act. So we have not been very, I would say, proactive in
Yeah.
communicating outward, but soon that may change. But yes, I think there is a view that, hey guys, what are you doing to change that? And that's also reflected in our growth.
And you talked
Back in the
about,
second quarter, we had disclosed that our growth was in the mid-single digit, leading industry growth, which was quite an achievement for us in an industry that typically grows 1% at best.
yeah, no, that's understood. And when we talked a while back, you talked about the challenges with your industry. We feel like it's pretty static, but of course, electric vehicles and everything is changing the nature of your industry as well, right? You need less lubricants in some of those new devices, so that's a very interesting macro challenge.
Indeed.
So that's super interesting. So you talked about that first marine use case. You talked about building control towers. How are you driving your vision for that transformation when you take it a little bit more at scale? How do you want to shape that transformation?
But I think what guides us, what guides me is how do we drive for competitiveness across the various categories in which we are present. Yes. So what are the meaningful ways in which we become more relevant for that customer, that consumer? It does start at times with, how do you show up with the right product, but it also at times starts with how do you formulate? And thereby, how do you manage some of the constraints from the supply base? And this is where the control tower is going to be a meaningful tool for us to better manage some of our supply, our raw material supply, our constraints, and also take advantages across the different markets. If we talk about base oils, if we talk about additives, single ingredients, and so forth, how do we bring our costs to the lowest level, but also how do we then formulate at the relevant cost? Because at times, this is predicated by where do you blend. In our industry, typically, raw materials is the single most expensive or biggest cost. The second one is logistics.
Of course, your products are heavy.
Indeed. How do you get to that customer? How do you get to that consumer? And then the third, and by a long distance, is the manufacturing cost. So you have to manage those trade-offs and make sure that your team is ready to drive for this, especially when some of your customers are indeed asking for fairly stringent requirements, technical requirements, but also for a pricing target, which is quite ambitious.
And your products being, whether, heavy, hard to move, I suspect you can't let a lot of inventory on site with the client, and then you have to have this real-time adjustment. So, talk a bit about the control tower. I mean, this is a word in 2025 that can cover multiple realities, from basic analytics to intelligent systems. So, what is your view on that control tower? What do you want to achieve with it?
Well, again, outcome is making sure that we show up on time with a relevant product to our customers and consumers. And the complexity comes from the various, I would say, channel members that we serve, their demand signals. So rather than using sell-in, i.e. what they buy, is really understanding what their customers are buying and where are those customers or consumers buying those goods, so that we can apprehend truly what is a relevant demand. Because in a world where you have lots of distortions, it does create at times some effects where you end up with too much inventory, or you end up with not being able, again, to satisfy that demand, being able to get ready. How do I bring in the relevant materials? How do I make sure that I dispatch those materials to the relevant blend sites, either our own or third parties, so that we can optimize our capacity to serve those customers? So having that end-to-end visibility and making sure that we drive the trade-offs across is really important in an industry where, every cent counts.
Yeah. So it's visibility, it's orchestration, is prediction, it's anticipation.
And action, taking the actions, triggering the actions, and not waiting. So being able to automate some of those decisions that typically may take, imagine, a dozen of wondering, okay, what do we do? And that on a continuous basis, 24 by 7. Yes. So that's the magic of the technology. A lot of the things that you are not able to actually make happen today is becoming possible.
So let's talk a bit about that. That's a nice segue, JP, and thanks for that. I mean, I love that story. It's super interesting. But let's talk a bit about not the technology per se, but you joined from Firmenich, going into BP Castrol, large, complex organization. You talked about 130 years of history. You're driving that transformation. Talk a little bit, and you move fast. You sometimes feel like you're moving faster than much smaller. Well, relatively speaking, I can promise you that you've been moving fast. I see a lot of other organizations who are not yet moving that fast. So what's been the JP magic here to get things going and to drive adoption at scale? I mean, we met in London 6 months ago. You're now talking about 2-3 quarters behind you with results. But I'm really curious about how you've been driving this adoption at speed, at scale. Talk a little bit about how you did it and the challenges and the opportunities, what you do differently, what you've done well. This is a very open conversation.
Let me reset first the perspective. I don't think that we have gone as fast as we could.
Well, that defines speed, by the way. A fast driver never thinks he's going fast enough.
Depends on the car as well.
Exactly.
But look, it's a team. It's a team, and it's making sure that the team embraces first the technology. Yes, because effectively you're asking for people that are not possibly digitally native, that used to do things in Excel, to reconsider how things get done, and to potentially having to consider that their work is going to change in a very profound manner. And for managers is to say, well, I'm no longer going to be required to make decisions. I don't need to be part of the loop. I don't need to be on the loop. I can be off the loop. That requires a huge amount, I would say, of effort to reset the expectations. And at times it requires also for us to go and recruit new team members. And what we have been doing in parallel to, let's say, doing the pilot with ERA is shifting a large part of our above site activities, supply chain, into 3 service centers in Budapest, in Pune, and in KL, and having had to also build new skill sets, new planning capabilities, leveraging those as well to drive part of the change. But of course, you cannot deliver performance without also leveraging the existing organization. And I have to say, my team and the broader organization has been hugely resilient in this period of significant transformation. And large part of it is also them being convinced that the technology path is the only one that will enable us to unleash sustainable competitiveness across different areas. Product formulation competitiveness, yes, but also service competitiveness. Yes, and again, this is why we started with ERA rather, excuse me, in terms of how do we service better our marine customers? Because the answer is not just about the product, it's how do we show up as well. So and that requires a link with the operating model and making sure that all across the organization, commercial teams, the supply chain teams, how do we drive that? How do we demonstrate it and build the relevant competencies alongside also with our colleagues around the technology teams?
So you went there. I was gonna bring the conversation to that point. You just broke up for like 10 seconds, but I think we got what you said, so that's fine. How did you bring the technology team along with you in that journey? Because that's always a challenge. That's always also an opportunity. So how do you take that challenge and turn it into an opportunity?
Well, I think in a gentle manner is how do you look at, I would say, different capabilities, and how do you show again what is the art of possible, and you get them engaged very early on. It's not about mandating, it's about helping others to also embrace new options and get to discover, to test. Very early on, what we decided was not to have a business case which was we're going to deliver 10 million, we're going to invest 20 million. We said, let's create a sandbox with AERA. Let's demonstrate that within that sandbox, we can create skills that will enable us to resolve some of our business challenges. Yes, and we did so across different functions. We had the technology team, we had supply chain, we had the business, and we had also the data teams and so forth. So in a cohesive, collective manner, we went after, a trial. It was low risk. It was a way for different individuals to discover the technology and indeed have very pragmatic application. So now, that takes its own time, but it allows for us to build, how do you call that internally, champions,
sure.
That are going to amplify the noise around what's the art of possible and why, again, this is the right choice for us to pursue. Then it takes its own, I would say, momentum.
So you talk about having a sandbox for a period of time, and in order to educate stakeholders and build and develop champions. How long did that take? Give our listener here a sense of, was it a year? Was it a month? How long did it take for you to try the technology, but more importantly, beyond the technology, to build that initial adoption? Was it? Can you get a sense of that? Can you give us a sense of that time?
Yeah, it took again a good 8 to 12 months.
Yeah. So you really took your time to really bring that DNA inside the organization and then expand in the journey. So you've talked a little bit about the tangible results you already got. I'm not going to come back to this, but you talk also about the art of the possible. This is a JP expression that you use quite often. So you look ahead. You've got your champions. You've got some tangible results. You've talked about the impact on your bottom line. Where do you think you're going next in your journey?
So, on the back of building the command center, it's how do we amplify that and how do we interlace decision intelligence across all of our planning activities? Yeah. So if you think about raw material planning, how do we automate 80% of it? How do we make sure that thereby we can amplify the impact on how do we manage our suppliers? Then you look at our formulations. We have thousands of formulations. How do we manage those on an ongoing basis and potentially reformulate at speed on the basis of what is available on the raw material level?
Now that's pretty fundamental. Like it's literally down to which product you're going to be making.
But also understanding the constraints, because clearly in some cases we can, in some cases we need to have OEM approval, so we need to understand what are some of the QC parameters in order to make that happen. The technology will enable us at speed to drive a lot of those decisions. So if you think about where we're heading with that, it's from being able to have true oversight of our supply chain, showing up better and on time with our customers and consumers, but also amplifying the impact that we can have in terms of how we make our products, how we formulate our products, and also understanding the constraints upstream with our suppliers. So the true power, I think, of the technology would be how do we drive to a world where the orchestration, again, understanding the constraints, become a reality. And then you are confronted daily with that reality. So I can have a list of to-dos, and some of those to-dos will be delegated to the machine, if I may call it. Yes, because we'll have decided that the impact is a relevant one. I think the beautiful part with ERA is that I understand what is the impact of the decisions I make and the decisions I don't make, the recommendations I want to follow, and the recommendations I say, I'm not so sure about it. And of course, all of the decisions that are enabled as part of the, let's say, daily runs. So all of that will enable us to fundamentally change how we drive the supply chain first, but also, I'm convinced, will change our operating model and will drive to a far more integrated operating model across the organization. So what does that mean? It's an organization that can be far more proactive in terms of how it shows up in front of its customers, fact-based or insight-based, understand where the consumers are, where are the customers, and what do they want. So your capacity to be relevant, I can only assume that my competitors are going to do it. Yes. So the stakes in terms of pace and relevance are only increasing. Yes.
Yeah. No, I
Thanks
appreciate
to
it.
you, Fred.
No, as I like to say, we build the technology, but you're the ones doing the hard work. And as often say, we are the innovators with our tech, but you are the disruptors, and you're surely driving an aggressive transformation here. But I'm glad that you're getting the impact that you and I discussed before you started on that journey. So we've talked about a little bit, talk about BP Castrol, the challenges, the supply chain opportunities, not challenges that you're tackling now, the tangible results you're getting, how you got there, how you drove change. So we covered a lot. And as we're getting close to wrapping up that episode, always ask to finish with that question. And I've asked you that question on stage before, but what's your advice for those who are listening today, who are working in large, complex organizations, who are seeing the opportunity but have not fundamentally started? What's your advice for them? And those who are just starting and want to accelerate, what would you say to them?
It's tough because there are different ways to look at it. First, I would say it's a human adventure. It's how do you leverage the technology to enhance your team's capacity to get things done. If you can get them convinced that indeed the technology will create new opportunities for them, will also amplify the capacity of the organization to be competitive, a large part of, I would say, the battle has been won. It's also making sure that you bring in insiders that can champion it, but also outsiders that perhaps bring in the digital literacy that is also required. And it does require at times a fundamental shift in terms of the type of profile required to really make sense of the technology end to end. Yes. So this is where I think we're still struggling in terms of how do we harness fully. And that's part of the, I would say, journey we have started in the build of the control tower is how do we structure it? How do we make sure that on the back we bring the relevant data scientists? Yes, because it's not just about planners, it's data scientists. And the beauty of the tool, the technology that ERA confers upon us is that we can build these skills. Yes, actually, to make full usage of it, we need to be able to build the skills and adapt the skills. So then what the beauty of it is, don't think that it's stagnant. It's not set. You need to evolve it, you need to iterate, and you need to be able to do so at speed. So how do you create a small team, cross-functional, that will continuously look at how do we adapt, how do we learn, and thereby how do we drive for further impact.
You just made a point here, JP, that I think I'm going to steal and leverage. We're recording this 4 days before our hub keynote in New York City. And I'm gonna steal that point, because the fact that you realize that being able to create your own skill with your own team drives adoption is fundamental, but I don't think it's well understood. Either I deploy something that's out of the box package and I force people into a model, or I give you the ability to bring your own intelligence into Era and driving adoption. This is a really fundamental point. I don't think we could wrap this conversation on any more powerful point, but please go ahead.
And it's a point of tension as well internally in terms of what are classical domains, because the world of IT digital domains / data management are converging. Yes.
Yeah.
So you cannot just delegate the build of the skill to a business analyst sitting in IT.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It has to be truly a cross-functional effort, and the business of the supply chain needs to own it.
That's phenomenal.
On it to make the full use and drive the impact for it, and also be able to go much faster, because the power of the tool is that you can go much faster than classical IT deployment. Yes. And that's, I think, what is going to drive in the future across industries also a lot of the paradigm shift that can be enabled through decision intelligence and AI.
JP, I can speak with you for hours, literally. Enjoy the conversation very much. Your insights always come out of our conversation with something, an idea or a concept that was probably somewhere, but now it's fresh. And I think I'm going to leverage a few elements from this conversation, and I'm sure the listeners will do the same. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that you're in Switzerland and it's Friday, late afternoon, and you have to take your daughter to Halloween stuff. So I really, really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your insight. Really appreciate the partnership over the years with us. Good luck for both the Halloween celebration and the future of the project. Big fan of what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Fred. I'm sorry I'm not going to be there with you in New York, but I love also to be able to spend time with you, your teams, and it's always exciting in terms of thinking about the art of possible.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, JP. And this concludes our Decision Intelligence podcast, BP Castrol, scaling decision intelligence for real results. You can view today's podcast on our website at www.eratechnology.com. Thank you.